Hello, 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 greetings, salutations, konnichiwa, and every other form of green across this vast, marvelous multiverse. I am Matsu Quinox. This is Horace, and welcome back, my dear scholars, once again to the study. Hello there. Oh, thank you for the Raid Crusader Corrupted. Thank you. Welcome, all you fine scholars. Hello there, Yulian20. Welcome. Ahoy, mateys, indeed. Hello there, Firefly. Hello there, Private Maverick. Welcome. Glad to see you all here. And for anyone who is new, let me introduce myself. I am Matsu Quinox, Omniversal Interdimensional Librarian, reading streamer, and variety streamer. Happy to be your entertainment for this evening, morning, or afternoon, or wherever you happen to be. So then, my dear scholars, how are you all doing? Hello there, Kintron. Welcome. Good to see you. Fabulous. Good to hear that, Yulian20, Crusader Corrupted, doing good. I'm glad to hear it. I'm glad to have you all here. It's wonderful to have you wonderful scholars here. I, for myself, well, it's been a very tiring day. Horace and I got up a little bit earlier than usual to do some work in the study. We're still working on the sub basement, trying to get that all fixed up, and we're hoping to make something of that. Kintron, doing good. I'm glad to hear it, Kintron. Private Maverick, I'm doing pretty good. Good to hear it. Firefly, I'm okay. Oh, that's good. Well, okay's good. I mean, hopefully it's a okay. Hopefully it's a good form of okay and not a bad form of okay. Oh my goodness. Oh, this dust is in my nose. So if you hear me sniffling, it's all that wonderful dust from working. Mm. So yes. So tonight, tonight, we are continuing our reading of Treasure Island. Yay! Oh, we've been having quite a bit of an adventure, haven't we, my dear scholars? Mm. We're a little bit halfway through, maybe a little bit less. Oh, hello there, Darth. Yo ho ho and a bottle of rum. I'm having a good day also. Oh, excellent to hear. Wonderful to hear. I'm always so happy to hear scholars when they're having good days because this stream is for you. I do this all for you. And if you're not having a good day, well, I hope this stream will provide some kind of entertainment and lift your spirits a little bit. I'm still also recovering from the last stream. The spicy chili, the spicy cheese did a number on me, I'm afraid. Oh my goodness, I, I couldn't taste after that. Oh, jalapeno and ghost pepper cheese is a major mistake. That was a bit of a mistake to take. Oh, and I still have some left over. Oh my goodness. I'm not sure what I'm going to do with it. I have to figure something out for it. I'm sure we can use it somehow. We found the kitchen, by the way. The kitchen is back, so hopefully we can maybe use it for some kind of meal or a snack. Mm. But I digress. As I said before, tonight we are reading more Treasure Island. Mm. I am really excited to continue our story. We're getting. It's going at a fine pace. I'm kind of surprised. It's going at a very good pace for a story. Ah, Kinchon. Well, it's already spicy cheese. Might as well make nachos. I don't. Do we have any chips, Horace? We don't. We'll have to get some. That might be an actual good idea. I'll have to try that. Oh my goodness. But yes, Firefly, yay, hire me. Well, I'll need you to forward your resume, of course, and we'll have to go through an interview process. But after that, I'm sure I'll be able to find some place for you to help out. Oh my goodness. But yes, as I was saying, we are reading Treasure Island. Um, So, where did we left off in the book? Before I forget what we're doing tonight. Oh my goodness. Let's see. So last time, they've finally reached the island after all this trouble. And Jim, having discovered the true nature of Lon John Silver and the other crew members, has decided to head off to the island on his own. So, smuggling inside a boat that was going ashore, he quickly made a dash for it into the jungle. The question is, what shall he find there? Hmm. So, my dear scholars, shall we begin our reading and journey into the world of Treasure Island? Treasure and Buccaneers. Buccaneers. I don't know the next word I was going to use. Julian 20, yes, please. Oh, okay. I see someone's eager to get started with the story. Oh my goodness, dizzy. Okay. Well, my dear scholars, let us sit back, relax, have a hot or cold beverage, and perhaps maybe this should be a good time for you to bring out a bowl of snacks. Darth, Thursday is now my favorite day of the week. All my favorite streamers are on tonight, so I always have something to look forward to on Thursdays. I'm honored to be included in that fine list, and I'm glad you're being entertained. I always enjoy hearing scholars enjoying themselves. So glad to hear that, Darth. Thank you. So if you don't, maybe this time would be a good idea for you to take some snacks as well. Sit back, relax, have a hot or cold beverage of your liking, have a bowl of snacks ready, and let us begin our continual reading of Treasure Island by Robert Louis Stevenson. And let me get a hydration just so I can keep my throat well hydrated. Chapter 14. The First Blow. I was so pleased at having given the slip to Lon John that I began to enjoy myself and look around me with some interest on the strange land that I was in. I had crossed a marshy track full of willows, bulrushes, and odd outlandish swampy trees, and I had now come out upon the skirts of an open piece of undulating sandy country, about a mile long, dotted with a few pines, and a great number of contorted trees, not unlike the oak in growth, but pale in the foliage, like willows. On the far side of the open stood one of the hills, with two quaint, craggy peaks shining vividly in the sun. I now felt for the first time the joy of exploration. The isle was uninhabited. My shipmates I had left behind, and nothing lived in front of me but dumb brutes and fowls. That's not a very nice thing to say. Cool Skeleton, hello, I hope I didn't miss too much. No, we just started. Welcome, Cool Skeleton. Glad to have you here. We've just started our reading, so you're in perfect time. I turned hither and thither among the trees. Here and there were flowering plants unknown to me. Here and there I saw snakes, and one raised his head from a ledge of rock and hissed at me with a noise not unlike the spinning of a top. Little did I suppose that he was a deadly enemy, and that the noise was the famous rattle. Then I came to a long thicket of these oak-like trees, live or evergreen oaks, I heard afterwards they should be called, which grew low among the sand like brambles, the boughs curiously twisted, the foliage compact like thatch. The thicket stretched down from the top of one of the sandy knolls, spreading and growing taller as it went, until it reached the margin of the broad, reedy fen, through which the nearest of the little rivers soaked its way into the anchorage. The marsh was streaming in the strong sun, and the outline of the spyglass trembled through the haze. All at once, there began to go a sort of bustle among the bulrushes. A wild duck flew up with a quack, another followed, and soon over the whole surface of the marsh a great cloud of birds hung screaming and circling in the air. I judged at once that some of my shipmates must be drawing near along the borders of the fen. Nor was I deceived, for soon I heard the very distant and low tones of a human voice, which, as I continued to give ear, grew steadily louder and nearer. This put me in a great fear, and I crawled under cover of the nearest live oak, and squatted there, hearkening as silent as a mouse. Another voice answered. Then the first voice, which I now recognized to be Silver's, once more took up the story, and ran on for a long while in a stream, only now and again interrupted by the other. By the sound they must have been talking earnestly, and almost fiercely, but no distinct word came to my hearing. At last the speakers seemed to have paused, and perhaps have sat down, for not only did they cease to draw any nearer, but the birds themselves began to grow more quiet, and to settle again to their places in the swamp. And now I began to feel that I was neglecting my business, that since I had been so foolhardy as to come ashore with these desperadoes, the least I could do was to overhear them at their councils, and that my plain and obvious duty was to draw as close as I could manage, under the favorable ambush of the crouching trees. I could tell the direction of the speakers pretty exactly, not only by the sound of their voices, fumbled there, but by the behavior of the few birds that still hung in alarm above the heads of the intruders. Oh, hello there, Dr. Zadium. Welcome. Glad to have you here. We've just started the chapter for tonight. Crawling on all fours, I made steadily, but slowly, towards them, till at last, raising my head to an aperture among the leaves, I could see clear down into a little green dell beside the marsh, and closely set about with trees, where Long John Silver and another of the crew stood face to face in conversation. The sun beat full upon them. Silver had thrown his hat beside him on the ground, and his great smooth blond face, all shiny with heat, was lifted to the other man's in a kind of appeal. Darth, to give you an idea of how much I enjoy your stream, I'm a big sports fan. The NBA draft is on now, yet I'd rather be here, much more entertaining. Oh, thank you. I feel absolutely honored by this. Thank you, Darth. Oh, warms my heart. And now give me a second while I find Silver's voice again. Mates, he was saying, it's because I thinks gold dust of you. Gold dust, and you may lay to that. If I hadn't took you like pitch, do you think I'd have been here a warning of you? All's up, you can't make nor mend. It's to save your neck that I must speak in, and if one of the wild uns knew it, where und I be, Tom? Now tell me, where und I be? Silver, said the other man, and I observed he was not only red in the face, but spoke as hoarse as a crow, and his voice shook too like a taut rope. Silver, says he, you're old, and you've honest, or has the name for it, and you've money too.
which lots of poor sailors hasn't. And you're brave, or I mistook. And will you tell me you will let yourself be led away with that kind of a mess of swabs? Not you, as sure as God sees me. I'd sooner lose my hand if I turn against my duty.
And then all of a sudden, he was interrupted by a noise. I had found one of the honest hands. Well, here at the same moment came news of another. Far away out in the marsh there arose, all of a sudden, a sound like the cry of anger, then another on the back of it, and then one horrid long drawn scream. The rocks of the spyglass re echoed it a score of times. The whole troop of marsh birds rose again, darkening heaven with a simultaneous whir. And long after that death yell was still ringing in my brain, silence had re-established its empire, and only the rustle of the redescending birds and the boom of the distant surges disturbed the languor of the afternoon. Tom had leaped at the sound, like a horse at the spur, but Silver had not winked an eye. He stood where he was, rested lightly on his crutch, watching his companion like a snake about to spring.
John,
Said the sailor, stretching out his hand.
hands off.
Cried Silver, leaping back a yard, as it seemed to me with the speed and security of a trained gymnast.
Hands off if you like, John Silver, said the other. It's a black conscience that can make you feared of me. But in heaven's name, tell me what was that?
That, returned Silver, smiling away, but warier than ever, his eye a mere pinpoint in his big face, but gleaming like a crumb of glass.
That's who I reckon. That's be Allen.
At this, poor Tom flashed out like a hero.
Allen!
He cried.
Then rest his soul for a true seaman. And as for you, John Silver, long you've been a mate of mine, but you're a mate of mine no more. If I die like a dog, I'll die in my duty. You've killed Allen, have you? Kill me too if you can, but I defies you.
And with that, this brave fellow turned his back directly on the cook, and set off walking for the beach. But he was not destined to go far. With a cry, John seized the branch of a tree, whipped the crutch out of his armpit, and sent that uncouth missile hurtling through the air. It struck poor Tom point foremost and with stunning violence, right between the shoulders in the middle of his back. His hands flew up, he gave a sort of gasp, and fell. Oh my goodness. That is violent. Oh my goodness. Long John is a man not to be messed with. Whether he was injured much or little, none could ever tell. Like enough, to judge from the sound, his back was broken on the spot. But he had no time given him to recover. Silver, agile as a monkey, even without leg or crutch, was on top of him next moment, and had twice buried his knife up to the hilt in that defenseless body. From my place of ambush I could hear him pant aloud as he struck the blows. Cool skeleton, beating up injured people, yay! Well, not just beating up, I guess killing injured people, ugh. Again, the 1950s version of Treasure Island, it omits all this and tries to really soften Long John up a lot, I think. I do not know what it yeah. I do not know what it rightly is to faint, but I do know that for the next little while the whole world swam away from before me in a whirling mist. Silver and the birds on the tall spyglass hilltop, going round and round and topsy-turvy before my eyes, and all manner of bells ringing and distant voices shouting in my ear. Kintron definitely sounds like he's been a harpooner before. Apparently so, yes. When I came again to myself, the monster had pulled himself together, his crutch under his arm, his hat upon his head. Just before him Tom lay motionless upon the sward, but the murderer minded him not a whit, cleansing his blood-stained knife the while upon a wisp of grass. Darth, question: have you seen Disney's version where they made the story space themed? Kintron Treasure Planet. I have seen it. It's actually a very good adaptation. I really enjoyed it. It's actually very clever with a lot of the alterations to the story. So yeah, I approve of it as a movie. Everything else was unchanged. The sun still shining mercilessly on the streaming marsh and the tall pinnacle of the mountain. I could scarce persuade myself that murder had been actually done, and a human life cruelly cut short a moment since before my eyes. But now John put his hand into his pocket, brought out a whistle, and blew upon it several modulated blasts that rang far across the heated air. I could not tell, of course, the meaning of the signal, but it instantly awoke my fears. More men would be coming. I might be discovered. They had already slain two of the honest people. After Tom and Alan, might not I come next? Cool Skeleton. It's been a few years since I watched Treasure Planet. Darth. I loved it also. I actually had no idea it was based on this book until now. Well, that's cool. Now you know, and now you can see the differences between that version and the book version, or the similarities. That's always a neat thing when you see a movie and then are able to revisit the book it's based off of. You get to see what they thought of, what they changed, what they altered. Cool Skeleton. One character I can't forget is the pink blob guy. I cannot remember the name of it, but I do know that was the adaptation they did for Captain Flint the Parrot, which again was pretty clever of them. Instantly I began to extract myself and crawl back again, with what speed and silence I could manage, to the more open portion of the wood. As I did so, I could hear hails coming and going between the old buccaneer and his comrades, and this sound of danger lent me wings. As soon as I was clear of the thicket, I ran as I never ran before, scarce minding the direction of my flight, so long as it led me from the murderers. And as I ran, fear grew and grew upon me, until it turned into a kind of frenzy. Private Maverick, never forget the Muppets. Oh yes, never forget Muppet Island. Reemley. Oh, hello there, Reemley. Welcome. How often do you stream? Oh, and thank you for the follow. Welcome to our fine family of streamers. How often do I stream? Usually I stream every Tuesday and every Thursday, depending on situation. I will sometimes do extra streams, but usually those are special streams, like movie streaming or collabs or event streams. But I'm glad to have you here. We are in the middle of reading Treasure Island. You just joined us as we're finishing this first chapter for the night. We'll be reading more though, so never fear on missing anything. Where was I? Indeed, could anyone be more entirely lost than I? When the gun fired, how should I dare to go down to the boats among those fiends, still smoking from their crime? Would not the first of them who saw me wring my neck like a snipe's? Would not my absence itself be an evidence to them of my alarm, and therefore of my fatal knowledge? It was over, I thought. Goodbye to the Hispaniola. Goodbye to the squire, the doctor, and the captain. There was nothing left for me but death by starvation or death by the hands of the mutineers. All this while, as I say, I was still running, and without taking any notice, I had drawn near to the foot of the little hill with the two peaks, and had got into a part of the island where the live oaks grew more widely apart, and seemed more like forest trees in their bearing and dimensions. Mingled with these were a few scattered pines, some 50, some near 70 feet high. The air, too, smelt more freshly than down beside the marsh. And here a fresh alarm brought me to a standstill with a thumping heart. Let me pause for a moment so I can get another hydration. Remember, when reading or doing anything, always keep yourself hydrated. It's important. And I have my book upside down. It's no good. I can't read upside down, so yeah. Chapter 15. The Man of the Island. From the side of the hill, which was here steep and stony, a spout of gravel was dislodged, and fell rattling and bounding through the trees. Cool skeleton. Gotta water the intergalactic librarian. Indeed. My eyes turned instinctively in that direction, and I saw a figure leap with great rapidity behind the trunk of a pine. What it was, whether bear or man or monkey, I could in no wise tell. It seemed dark and shaggy. More I knew not. But the terror of this new apparition brought me to a stand. I was now, it seemed, cut off upon both sides. Behind me the murderers, before me this lurking nondescript, and immediately I began to prefer the dangers that I knew to those I knew not. Silver himself appeared less terrible in contrast with this creature of the woods, and I turned on my heel, and looking sharply behind me over my shoulder, began to retrace my steps in the direction of the boats. Darth, fun fact while it's still on my mind, Disney used a Shakespearean play as inspiration for one of their most iconic movies. Ah, I think I know which one you speak of. But do tell, Darth. Do tell. Illuminate our dear scholars to this fact. It really is fascinating, too. Where was I? I'll keep reading in the meantime. Instantly, the figure reappeared, and making a wide circuit, began to head me off. I was tired at any rate, but had I been as fresh as when I rose, I could see it was in vain for me to contend in speed with such an adversary. From trunk to trunk the creature flitted like a deer, running manlike on two legs, but unlike any man that I had ever seen, stooping almost double as it ran. Yet a man it was. I could no longer be in doubts about that. I began to recall what I had heard of cannibals. I was within an ace of calling for help, but the mere fact that he was a man, however wild, had somewhat reassured me. my fear of Silver began to revive in proportion. I stood still, therefore, and cast about for some method of escape, and as I was so thinking, the recollection of my pistol flashed into my mind. As soon as I remembered I was not defenseless, courage glowed again in my heart, and I set my face resolutely for this man of the island, and walked briskly towards him. He was concealed by this time behind another tree trunk, but he must have been watching me closely, for as soon as I began to move in his direction, he reappeared and took a step to meet me. Then he hesitated, drew back, came forward again, and at last, to my wonder and confusion, threw himself on his knees and held out his clasped hands in supplication. Darth, The Lion King is based on the Shakespearean play Hamlet. It is indeed. That is a very neat fact too. In fact, if you know the play Hamlet and you watch The Lion King, you see a lot of the same beats. There are some differences, but there are a lot of the same beats as well. And in fact, The Lion King 2, the often maligned sequel, direct-to-video sequel, takes its cues a lot from Romeo and Juliet, with some differences. Private Maverick, Herman, he's there? That's the funny thing, Private Maverick. The character of Herman Toothrot from Monkey Island was inspired by the character we are about to meet. Kintron, I'd throw in there that Lion King 1.5 Timon and Pumbaa was poking at Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are dead. I believe so. And oh, I love that play, Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are dead. It is a fantastic play. If you've never heard it or seen the movie version, it is worth a watch. It is both heartbreaking and hilarious at the same time. Really perfect stream to tune into at 2 a.m. Oh, well, thank you. I'm glad I could be here for you. Ah, I'm glad. Well, I hope you're enjoying this. I don't know. I'm starting to babble, aren't I? Yes. Well, thank you. I'm glad this can be a perfect stream for you. That sounds a little bit terrible. I'm sorry. But yes, I'm always happy to have streamers really happy with the streams I'm doing. As I mentioned before earlier in the stream, I do this all for you. This entertainment is all for you. So your joy is my joy, and your happiness is my happiness. At that, I once more stopped. Who are you? I asked. Ben Gunn, he answered, and his voice sounded hoarse and awkward, like a rusty lock. I'm poor Ben Gunn, I am, and I haven't spoke with a Christian these 3 years. I could now see that he was a white man like myself, and that his features were even pleasing. Again, this was written in the 1800s. I apologize for any of the language. What can I say? His skin, wherever it was exposed, was burnt by the sun. Even his lips were black, and his fair eyes looked quite startling in so dark a face. Darth, I only know of this because in high school my teacher did a whole project on this. We read Hamlet, watched the movie for Hamlet when we finished Hamlet movie. She said, I have a surprise for you all. She then put on The Lion King. I pissed off my entire class because I was saying all the characters' lines before they said them. Also sang along to all the songs. Ah, that sounds wonderful. Ah. Well, that's very neat for your teacher to do, and a wonderful way to educate on the story. Of all the beggarmen that I had seen or fancied, he was the chief for raggedness. He was clothed with tatters of old ship canvas and old sea cloth, and this extraordinary patchwork was all held together by a system of the most various and incongruous fastenings: brass buttons, bits of stick, and loops of tarry gaskin. About his waist he wore an old brass buckled leather belt, which was the one thing solid in his whole accoutrement. 3 years? I cried. Were you shipwrecked?
Nay, mate,
Said he.
marooned.
I had heard the word, and knew it stood for a horrible kind of punishment common enough among the buccaneers, in which the offender is put ashore with a little powder and shot, and left behind on some desolate and distant island.
Marooned 3 years agone,
He continued.
and lived on goats since then, and berries, and oysters. Wherever a man is, says I, a man can do for himself. But, mate, my heart is sore for Christian diet. You might happen to have a piece of cheese about you, now? No? Well, many's the long night I've dreamed of cheese, toasted mostly, and woke up again, and here I were.
If ever I can get aboard again, said I, you shall have cheese by the stone. At this time he had been feeling the stuff of my jacket, smoothing my hands, looking at my boots, and generally in the intervals of his speech showing a childish pleasure in the presence of a fellow creature. But at my last words he perked up into a kind of startled slyness.
If ever you get aboard again, says you,
He repeated.
why now, who's to hinder you?
Not you, I know, was my reply. Oh, hello there, Sophia Ignace. Welcome. Sophia Ignace redeemed 5-second book review. Okay, let me think of one. Let me think of one. I'm trying to remember the title of this one. Oh, what was the name of it? Oh, I remember. Okay, 5-second book review. The Decameron. 5 rich idiots hole themselves up in a house during a plague, and very not suitable for work stories ensure. That was your 5-second book review. Thank you for the redeem there, Sophia. Darth, the end of the project was we had to do an essay comparing a character from each movie. I took the lazy and easy route and did my essay on the comparison between Hamlet and Simba. However, I was so detailed in my essay, my teacher was impressed with how, even though I did the easiest comparison, I was the most detailed in class. Good for you, Darth. Good for you. Julian20, that is great and accurate. Cool Skeleton, did I just hear a Matsu snap? Yes, you did. Oh my goodness, I forgot. Oh, I forgot how good my microphone is. Oh my goodness. Julian20, wow, Darth, I am impressed. I'm impressed as well. Where was I? Not you, I know, was my reply.
And right you was,
He cried.
Now, you, what do you call yourself, mate?
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Dr. Zadium has redeemed radio voice. Give me 1 second. Let me hydrate myself so I can get the voice right. Hello there, all you fine scholars. Welcome back to Radio Matsu, here live on the air for your pleasure. Tonight we're enjoying a bit of story about buccaneers, pirates, and buried treasure. Horace and I are very happy to have you here. So sit back, relax, enjoy yourself, have a hot or cold beverage of your liking, and we'll continue this fine evening of stories, tales, and entertainment just for your liking here on Radio Matsu. Hope you enjoyed that, Dr. Zadium. Cool skeleton. I'm gonna save most of my points so I can recommend one of my favorite games. Oh my goodness. I can't wait to see what that is. Yulian 20, gotta love Radio Matsu. Well, I'm glad. Dr. Zadium, you should really record that as your stream intro. I don't know about that. I want to make it a special thing and not use it constantly. That's why I made it a redeem. Because, if I made it into a stream intro, then it loses something of the spark of it. And I really have to be able to do it to get into it to do it properly.
And right you was,
He cried.
Now what do you call yourself, mate?
Jim, I told him.
Jim. Jim,
Said he. Says he, quite pleased apparently.
well now, Jim, I've lived that rough as you'd be ashamed to hear of. Now, for instance, you wouldn't think I had a pious mother to look at me?
He asked. Well, I know. Not in particular, I answered.
Ah, well, said he, but I had remarkable pious, and I was a civil pious boy, and could rattle off my catechism that fast as you couldn't tell one word from another. And here's what it comes to, Jim, and it begins with chuck farthing on the blessed gravestones. That's what it begun with. But it went further than that, and so my mother told me, and predicted the whole, she did, the pious woman. But it was Providence that put me here. I've thought it all out in this here lonely island, and I'm back on piety. You don't catch me tasting rum so much, but just a thimbleful for luck, of course. The first chance I have. I'm bound I'll be good, and I see the way too. And Jim,
looking all around him and lowering his voice to a whisper,
I'm rich.
Dr. Zadium, makes sense. It's very good, though. I'm glad to hear it. I now felt sure that the poor fellow had gone crazy in his solitude, and I suppose I must have shown the feeling in my face, for he repeated this statement hotly.
Rich! Rich, I says! And I'll tell you what, I'll make a man of you, Jim. Ah, Jim, you bless your stars, you will. You was the first that found me.
And at this, there came suddenly a lowering shadow over his face, and he tightened his grasp upon my hand, and raised a forefinger threateningly before my eyes.
Now, Jim, you tell me true. That ain't Flint's ship,
he asked. At this I had a happy inspiration. I began to believe that I had found an ally, and I answered him at once. It's not Flint's ship, and Flint is dead. But I'll tell you true, as you ask me, there are some of Flint's hands aboard. Worse luck for the rest of us.
Not a man with one leg,
he gasped. Silver? I asked.
Ah, Silver,
says he.
That were his name.
He's the cook, and the ringleader too. He was still holding me by the wrist, and at that he gave it quite a wring.
If you were sent by Lord John,
he said,
I'm as good as pork, and I know it. But where was you, do you suppose?
I had made my mind up in a moment, and by way of answer told him the whole story of our voyage and the predicament in which we found ourselves. He heard me with the keenest interest, and when I had done, he patted me on the head.
"You're a good lad, Jim," he said, "and you're all in a clove hitch, ain't you? Well, you just put your trust in Ben Gunn. Ben Gunn's the man to do it. Would you think it likely now that your squire would prove a liberal-minded one in case of help? Him being in a clove hitch, as you remark."
I told him the squire was the most liberal of men.
"Aye, but you see,"
returned Ben Gunn,
"I didn't mean giving me a gate to keep, and a suit of livery clothes, and such. That's not my mark, Jim. What I mean is, would he be likely to come down to the tune of, say, £1,000 out of money that's as good as a man's own already?"
I am sure he would, said I. As it was, all hands were to share.
"And a passage home?"
he added with a look of great shrewdness. Why, I cried, the squire's a gentleman, and besides, if we got rid of the others, we should want you to help work the vessel home.
"Ah!"
said he,
"so you would!"
and he seemed very much relieved.
"Now I'll tell you what," he went on. "So much I'll tell you, and no more. I were in Flint's ship when he buried the treasure, he and 6 alone, 6 strong seamen. There were ashore nigh on a week, and us standing off and on in the old Walrus. One fine day, up with the signal, and here comes Flint by himself in a little boat, and his head done up in a blue scarf. The sun was getting up, and mortal white he looked about the cutwater. But there he was, you mind, and 6 all dead, dead and buried. How he done it not a man aboard us could make out. It was battle, murder, and sudden death, leastwise, him against 6. Billy Bones was the mate. Long John, he was the quartermaster, and they asked him where the treasure was. 'Ah,' says he, 'you can go ashore if you like and stay,' he says, 'but as for the ship, she'll beat up for more, by thunder.' That's what he said. Well, I was in another ship 3 years back, and we sighted this island. 'Boys,' said I, 'here's Flint treasure. Let's land and find it.' The captain was displeased at that, but my messmates were all of a mind and landed. 12 days they looked for it, and every day they had the worst word for me, till one fine morning all hands went aboard. 'As for you, Benjamin Gunn,' says they, 'here's a musket,' they says, 'and a spade and pickaxe. You can stay here and find Flint's money for yourself,' they says. Well, Jim, 3 years have I been here, and not a bite of Christian diet from that day to this. But now, you look here, look at me. Do I look like a man before the mast? No, says you. Nor I weren't neither, I says. And with that he winked and pinched me hard. Let me get a quick hydration. Ben Gunn's a little bit difficult to do. Here's an interesting fact. Again, I'm going off the Disney version. In the 1950s Disney version, they skip the entire backstory of how Ben Gunn got to the island. Sort of. I believe in the 1950s version, Ben Gunn says that Long John Silver was the one who marooned him, which is why he's so afraid of Long John Silver. Which is interesting because in the book version, as you can see, Ben Gunn was separately marooned in a separate incident which had nothing to do with Flint or Long John Silver.
which again is Disney condensing the story down to bare story points.
Just you mentioned them words to your squire, Jim,
He went on.
No, he weren't neither. That's the words. 3 years he were the man of this island, light and dark, fair and rain, and sometimes he would maybe think upon a prayer, says you, and sometimes he would maybe think of his old mother, so be as she's alive, you'll say. But the most part of Gun's time, this is what you'll say, the most part of his time was took up with another matter, and then you'll give him a nip like I do.
And he pinched me again in the most confidential manner.
Then, he continued, then you'll be up and you'll say this. Gun is a good man, you'll say, and he puts a precious sight more confidence, a precious sight, mind that, in a gentleman born than in these gentlemen of fortune, having been one himself.
Well, I said, I don't understand one word that you've been saying, but that's neither here nor there, for how am I to get on board?
Ah,
Said he.
that's the hitch for sure. Well, there's my boat that I made with my 2 hands. I keep her under the white rock. If the worst comes to the worst, we might try that after dark. Hey!
He broke out.
What's that?
For just then, although the sun had still an hour or two to run, all the echoes of the island awoke and bellowed to the thunder of a cannon. They have begun to fight, I cried. Follow me. And I began to run towards the anchorage, my terrors all forgotten, while close at my side the maroon man in his goat skins trotted easily and lightly.
Left, left, says he. Keep to your left hand, mate Jim, under the trees with you. That's where I killed my first goat. They don't come down here now. They're all mast-headed on them mountains for the fear of Benjamin Gunn. Ah! And there's the cemetery. Cemetery, you must... There's the cemetery.
Cemetery he must have meant.
You see the mounds? I come here to pray now and then, when I thought maybe a Sunday would be about due. It weren't quite a chapel, but it seemed more solemn-like. And then, says you, Ben Gunn was short-handed, no chaplain, no so much as a Bible and a flag, says.
And so he kept talking as I ran, neither expecting nor receiving any answer. The cannon shot was followed, by a considerable interval, by a volley of small arms. Another pause, and then, not a quarter of a mile in front of me, I beheld the Union Jack flutter in the air above a wood. Take another drink. Private Maverick, my name is Spam. I'm guessing that's from Monkey Island. I can't remember. Is that from Monkey Island? I'm not sure. Hmm. Oh, we've moved on to a new part of the story. We're on part 4, The Stockade. Private Maverick, Muppet Treasure Island. Oh, right, I need to rewatch that one. It's been a long time and I don't remember the lines from the movie. Oh my goodness. Oh boy, here we go. Uh, so dear scholars, here we go. We're changing narrative, which means now I'm going to have to do this entire chapter in accent. Oh my goodness, let's see if I can manage that. Chapter 16. Narrative continued by the Doctor. How the ship was abandoned. It was about 1:30. 3 bells in the sea phrase. The two boats went ashore from the Hispaniola. The captain, the squire, and I were talking matters over in the cabin. Had there been a breach of wind, we should have fallen on the 6 mutineers who were left aboard with us, slipped our cable, and away to sea. But the wind was wanting, and to complete our helplessness, down came Hunter with the news that Jim Hawkins had slipped into a boat and was gone ashore with the rest. It never occurred to us to doubt Jim Hawkins, but we were alarmed for his safety. With the men in the temper they were in, it seemed an even chance if we should see the lad again. We ran on deck. The pitch was bubbling in the seams. The nasty stench of the place turned me sick. If ever a man smelt fever and dysentery, it was in that abominable anchorage. The 6 scoundrels were sitting grumbling under a sail in the forecastle. Ashore we could see the gigs made fast, and a man sitting in each, hard by which the river runs in. One of them was whistling Lily Bolero. I don't think I pronounced that right, but I know that is a sea song. Waiting was a strain. It was decided that Hunter and I should go ashore with the jolly boat in quest of information. The gigs had leaned to their leaned to their right, but Hunter and I pulled straight in the direction of the stockade upon the chart. The two who were left guarding their boats seemed in a bustle at our appearance. Lily Boulero stopped off, and I could see the pair discussing what they ought to do. Had they gone and told Silver, all might have turned out differently. But they had their orders, I suppose, and decided to sit quietly where they were and hark back again to Lily Boulero. There was a slight bend in the coast, and I steered so as to put it between us even before we landed. And I steered it so as to put it between us. Even before we landed, we had thus lost sight of the gigs. I jumped out and came as near running as I durst. It's very hard to keep up this accent while I'm reading. Darth, back to what's said at the beginning of the stream. While I'm not watching the NBA draft live due to technology, I'm following the draft on my iPad. Oh, well that's good. At least you're able to follow it then. Technology can be very useful. Where was I? And I steered so as to put it between us. Even before we landed, we had thus lost sight of the gigs. I jumped out and came as near running as I durst, with a big silk handkerchief under my hat for coolness' sake, and a brace of pistols ready primed for safety. I had not gone 100 yards when I came on the stockade. This is how it was. A spring of clear water rose almost at the top of a knoll. Well on the knoll, and enclosing the spring, they had clapped a stout log house, fit to hold 20 people on a pinch, and loopholed for musketry on every side. All round this they had cleared a wide space, and then the thing was completed by a paling 6 feet high, without door or opening, too strong to pull down without time and labour, and too open to shelter the besiegers. The people in the log house had them in every way. They stood quiet in shelter and shot the others like partridges. All they wanted was a good watch and food, for short of a complete surprise, they might have held the place against the regiment. What particularly took my fancy was the spring, for, though we had a good enough place of it in the cabin of the Hispaniola, with plenty of arms and ammunition and things to eat and excellent wines, there had been one thing overlooked. We had no water. I was thinking this over, when they came ringing over the island the cry of a man at the point of death. I was not new to violent death. I have served His Royal Highness the Duke of Cumberland, and got a wound myself at Fontenoy, but I know my pulse when Dot and Kerry won. Jim Hawkins is gone, was my first thought. It is something to have been an old soldier, but more still to have been a doctor. There is no time to dilly-dally in our work, and so now I made up my mind instantly, and with no time lost returned to the shore, and jumped up on board the jolly boat. By good fortune Hunter pulled a good oar. We made the water fly, and the boat was soon alongside, and I aboard the schooner. Darth, yeah, I'm talented. I can watch you follow my sports and make sure my mac and cheese, which is under the broiler right now, doesn't set the smoke alarm in my apartment off. Oh, that is quite the multitask. I applaud you for that. I can multitask myself sometimes, but I am not that good at it, honestly. Horace is the better multitasker around here. It's why I rely on him so much. Don't I, Horace? And of course I appreciate you. Where was I? By good fortune, Hunter pulled a good oar. We made the water fly, and the boat was soon alongside, and I aboard the schooner. I found them all shaken, as was natural. The squire was sitting down as white as a sheet, thinking of the harm he had led us to. The good soul. And one of the 6 forecastle hands was little better.
There's a man, says Captain Smollett, nodding towards him, new to this work. He came nigh hand fainting, Doctor, when he heard the cry. Another touch of the rudder, and that man would join us.
I told my plan to the captain, and between us we settled on the details of its accomplishments. We put old Redruth in the gallery between the cabin and the forecastle, with 3 or 4 loaded muskets and a mattress for protection. Cool Skeleton, once I do more than 2 things, everything turns into a pile of black mush. Cool Skeleton, Horace is the businessman. That he is. That he is. Firefly, nothing makes one multitasking like cooking regularly. Maybe I should cook more. That is an idea. We put and a mattress for protection. Hunter brought the boat round under the stern port, and Joyce and I set to work loading her with powder tins, muskets, bags of biscuits, kegs of pork, and a cask of cognac, and my invaluable medicine chest. In the meantime, the squire and the captain stayed on deck, and the latter hailed the coxswain, who was the principal man aboard.
Mr. Hans, he said, here are 2 of us with a brace of pistols each. If any one of you 6 makes a signal of any description, that man's dead.
They were a good deal taken aback, and after a little consultation, one and all tumbled down the fore companion, thinking no doubt to take us on the rear. But when they saw Redruth waiting for them in the sparred gallery, they went about ship at once, and a head popped out again on deck.
Down, dog!
Cries the captain, and the head popped back again, and we heard no more, for the time, of these 6 very faint-hearted seamen. By this time, tumbling things in as they came, we had the jolly boat loaded as much as we dared. Joyce and I got out through the stern port, and we made for shore again, as fast as oars could take us. Another sip of water. Going through water fast today. Oh my goodness. I may need more water. Not sure. This second trip fairly aroused the watchers along shore. Lillibullero was dropped again, and just before we lost sight of them behind the little point, one of them whipped ashore and disappeared. I had half a mind to change my plan to destroy their boats, but I fear that Silver and the others might be close at hand, and all might very well be lost by trying for too much. Darth Firefly, I love cooking. There's not a day in the week I'm not cooking at least once a day. Ah, that's wonderful. Darth, it's happened to me multiple times while cooking and doing other things. That's how I got good at my multitasking, by learning. Fair enough. We had soon touched land in the same place as before, and set to provision the blockhouse. All 3 made the first journey, heavily laden, and tossed our stores over the palisade. Then, leaving Joyce to guard them, 1 man to be sure, but with half a dozen muskets, Hunter and I returned to the jolly boat. and loaded ourselves once more. So we proceeded without pausing to take breath, till the whole cargo was bestowed, when the two servants took up their positions in the blockhouse, and I, with all my power, sculled back to the Hispaniola. That we should have risked a second boatload seems more daring than it really was. They had the advantage of numbers, of course, but we had the advantage of arms. Not one of the men ashore had a musket, and before they could get within range for pistol shooting, we flattered ourselves we should be able to give a good account of a half dozen at least. The squire was waiting for me at the stern window, all his faintness gone from him. He caught the painter and made it fast, and we fell to loading the boat for our very lives. Pork, powder, and biscuit was the cargo, with only a musket and a cutlass apiece for Squire and me, and Redruth and the captain. The rest of the arms and powder we dropped overboard in 2 fathoms and a half of water, so that we could see the bright steel shining far below us in the sun on the clean, sandy bottom. By this time the tide was beginning to ebb, and the ship was swinging round to her anchor. Voices were heard faintly hallooing in the direction of the 2 gigs, and though this reassured us for Joyce and Hunter, who were well to the eastward, it warned our party to be off. Redruth retreated from his place in the gallery, and dropped in the boat, which we then brought round to the ship's counter, to be handier for Captain Smollett.
"Now, men," said he, "do hear me.
There was no answer from the forecastle.
It's to you, Abraham Gray. It's to you I am speaking."
Still no reply.
"Gray," resumed Mr. Smollett, a little louder, "I am leaving the ship, and I order you to follow your captain. I know you are a good man at bottom, and I dare say not one of the lot of you's as bad as he makes out. I have my watch here, in my hand. I give you 30 seconds to join me in."
There was a pause.
"Come, my fine fellow," continued the captain, "don't hang so long in stays. I'm risking my life, and the lives of these good gentlemen, every second."
Cool Skeleton, I know how to make a pretty good grilled cheese. It's a little weird to call it grilled cheese when it's been fried in a pan. That is true. I never thought about that. It is usually fried in a pan, isn't it? There's probably a book out there that explains. Horace, be sure to look for a book that explains why grilled cheese sandwiches are actually fried in a pan. Oh, thank you. There was a sudden scuffle, a sound of blows, and out burst Abraham Gray with a knife cut on the side of the cheek, and came running to the captain, like a dog to the whistle.
"I'm with you, captain. I'm with you, sir,"
said he. And the next moment he and the captain had dropped aboard of us, and we had shoved off and given way. We were I lost his voice. Ha! There was a sudden scuffle, a sound of blows, and out burst Abraham Gray with a knife cut on the side of the cheek, and came running to the captain, like a dog to the whistle.
"I'm with you, sir,"
said he, and the next moment he and the captain had dropped aboard of us, and we had shoved off and given way. We were clear out of the ship, but not yet ashore in our stockade. Chapter 17. Narrative continued by the Doctor. The Jolly Boat's last trip. This 5th trip was quite different from any of the others. In the first place, the little gallipot of a boat that we were in was gravely overloaded. 5 grown men, and 3 of them, Trelawny, Redruth, and the captain, over 6 feet high, was already more than she was meant to carry. Isao, you keep making such good voices. Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. And welcome, Isao. Welcome. Glad to have you here. Add to that the powder, pork, and bread bags. The gunwale was lipping astern. Several times we shipped a little water, and my breeches and the tail of my coat were all soaking wet before we had gone 100 yards. The captain made us trim the boat, and we got her to lie a little more evenly. All the same, we were afraid to breathe. Say, I have been lurking for a while now, and it's always good to lurk here. Ah, true. I'm glad to hear it, and I'm honored. I am fine with any of you who are lurking. As long as you're here and enjoying the reading, that's all that matters. In the second place, the ebb was now making a strong rippling current running westward through the basin, and then southward and seaward down the straits by which we had entered in the morning. Even the ripples were a danger to our overloaded craft, but the worst of it was that we were swept out of our true course, and away from our proper landing place behind the point. If we let the current have its way, we should come ashore beside the gigs, where the pirates might appear at any moment. "I cannot keep ahead for the stockyards, sir," said I to the captain. I was steering, while he and Redruth, two fresh men, were at the oars. "The tide keeps washing her down. Could you pull a little stronger?"
"Not without swamping the boat," said he. "You must bear up, sir, if you please. Bear up until you see you're gaining."
I tried, and found by experiment that the tide kept sweeping us westward until I had laid her head due east, or just about right angles to the way we ought to go. "We'll never get ashore at this rate," said I.
"If it's the only course that we can lie, sir, we must even lie it," returned the captain. "We must keep upstream. You see, sir," he went on, "if once we drop to leeward of the landing place, it's hard to say where we should get ashore, besides the chance of being boarded by the gigs, whereas the way we go the current must slacken, and then we can dodge back along the shore." "The current's less already, sir," said the man Gray, who was sitting in the fore-sheets. "You can ease off a bit." "Thank you, my man," said I, quite as if nothing had happened, for we had all quietly made up our minds to treat him like one of ourselves. Suddenly the captain spoke up again, and I thought his voice was a little charged. "The gun!"
said he. "I have thought of that," said I, for I made sure he was thinking of a bombardment of the fort. They could never get the gun ashore, and if they did, they could never haul it through the woods.
"Look astern, doctor,"
replied the captain. Darth, grilled cheese is called grilled because in American English, grilled and skillet toasted are roughly synonymous. Ah, that is a fantastic fact. Thank you for that food fact, Darth. We had entirely forgotten the Long Nine, and there to our horror were the five rogues busy about her, getting off her jacket, as they called the stout tarpaulin cover under which she sailed. Not only that, but it flashed into my mind at the same moment that the round shot and the powder for the gun had been left behind, and a stroke with an axe would put it all into possession of the evil ones aboard.
"Israel was Flint's gunner,"
said Gray hoarsely. At any risk, we put the boat's head direct for the landing place. By this time we had got so far out of the run of the current that we kept steering way even at our necessary gentle rate of rowing, and I could keep us steady for the goal. But the worst of it was that with the course I now held, we turned our broadside instead of our stern to the Hispaniola, and offered a target like a barn door. Get a quick drink. Darth, you're welcome. I did some brief Googling on the grilled cheese. Excellent. I could hear as well as see that brandy-faced rascal, Israel Hands, pumping down a round shot on the deck.
"Who's the best shot?"
asked the captain. "Mr. Trelawny, out and away," said I.
"Mr. Trelawny, will you please pick me off one of these men, sir? Hands, if possible," said the captain.
Trelawny was as cool as steel. He looked to the priming of his gun.
"Now!" cried the captain. "Easy with that gun, sir, or you'll swamp the boat. All hands stand by to trim her when he aims."
The squire raised his gun, the rowing ceased, and we leaned over to the other side to keep the balance, and all was so nicely contrived that we did not ship a drop. They held the gun, by this time slewed round upon the swivel, and Hans, who was at the muzzle of the rammer, was in consequence the most exposed. However, we had no luck, for just as Trelawney fired, down he stooped. The ball whistled over him, and it was one of the other four who fell. The cry he gave was echoed not only by his companions on board, but by a great number of voices from the shore, and looking in that direction I saw the other pirates trooping out from among the trees, and tumbling into their places in the boats. "Here comes the gig, sir," said I.
"Give way, then," cried the captain. "We mustn't mind if we swamp her now. If we can't get ashore, all's up."
"Only one of the gigs has been manned, sir," I added, "the crew of the others most likely going round by shore to cut us off."
"They'll have a hot run, sir," returned the captain. "Jack's ashore. You know, it's not that I mind, it's the wrong shot. Carpet balls! My lady's maid couldn't miss. Tell us, squire, when you see the match, and we'll hold water."
In the meantime we had been making headway at a good pace, for a boat so overloaded, and we had shipped but little water in the process. We were now close in, 30 or 40 strokes, and we should beach her, for the ebb had already disclosed a narrow belt of sand below the clustering trees. The gig was no longer to be feared. The little point had already concealed it from our eyes. The ebb tide, which had so cruelly delayed us, was now making reparation and delaying our assaultants. The one source of danger was the gun.
"If I durst," said the captain, "I'd stop and pick off another man."
But it was plain that they meant nothing should delay their shot. They had never so much as looked at their fallen comrades, though he was not dead, and I could see him trying to crawl away. "Ready!" cried the squire.
"Hold!"
cried the captain, quick as an echo. Cool skeleton. Random side banter while listening to Matsu reading. Best streams. I'm glad to hear that. Firefly, I believe it's a cheese toasty in the UK. Interesting. And he and Redruth backed with a great heave that sent her stern bodily under water. The report fell in at the same instant of time. This was the first that Jim heard, the sound of the squire's shot not having reached him. Where the ball passed, not one of us precisely knew, but I fancy it must have been over our heads, and that the wind of it may have contributed to our disaster. At any rate, the boat sank by the stern, quite gently, in 3 feet of water, leaving the captain and myself facing each other on our feet. The other 3 took complete headers, and came up again drenched and bubbling. So far, there was no great harm. No lives were lost, and we could wade ashore in safety. But there were all our stores at the bottom, and to make things worse, only 2 guns out of 5 remained in a state for service. Darth, you are correct with that one. Cool Skeleton, I feel like if you would have actually grilled a cheese sandwich, most of the cheese would melt into the base of the grill. Burnt cheese is an easy thing to clean. That is absolutely true. Mine I had snatched from my knees and held over my head by a sort of instinct. As for the captain, he had carried his over his shoulder by a bandolier, and like a wise man looked uppermost. The other 3 had gone down with the boat. To add to our concern, we heard voices already drawing near us in the woods along the shore, and we had not only the danger of being cut off from the stockade in our half-crippled state, but the fear before us whether if Hunter and Joyce were attacked by half a dozen, they would have the sense and conduct to stand firm. Hunter was steady, that we knew. Joyce was a doubtful case, a pleasant, polite man for a valet, and to brush one's clothes, but not entirely fitted for a man of war. With all this in our minds, We waded ashore as fast as we could, leaving behind us the poor jolly boat and a good half of all our powder and provisions. And we will stop there. I believe we are directly halfway through the book now. Um, we will move to the chat area to close out our night. Welcome back, my dear scholars. Firefly, well, nowadays, moose girls come with it. Most grills come with a flat cooking surface as well. Firefly, that's fine. Speech to text, that is fine, that is fine. Cool skeleton, ooh, you could make some good melts with that. Oh, yes, I have heard of that before. Oh, now I'm getting hungry for a grilled cheese sandwich. Oh my goodness. Yulian 20, wonderful reading. Thank you, thank you. Oh my goodness, things are getting exciting. It's interesting that they've switched the viewpoint now away from Jim. Although I think it's probably necessary since we need to see how the others got ashore, so we can't follow Jim completely without cheating the story. So switching the viewpoint from a written perspective would make absolute sense. Skeleton, we've been talking about grilled cheese toasties half the stream. That is true. That is true. Oh my goodness. Ah, Julie 20. Food is always good. Oh, it really is. It really is. After this stream, I am probably going to snack because I am famished. And yes, I know I don't necessarily have to eat. I mean, omniversal beings as myself don't really have a digestive system in the common phrase, but I like to eat as a convenience and a hobby. Darth, you. Yes, food is always good. Yulian 20, I feel like going for a walk. Oh, you do you? Interesting. Well, that being the case, so next week's stream, next Tuesday, if everything goes to plan, and I get everything working, we will be reading. Well, not reading. We'll be playing A Little to the Left DLC. I forget the name of it. I think it's Cupboards and Containers is the name of the new DLC, which is premiering next Tuesday. So we will be playing it on the day of its premiere. We will be streaming it on the day of the premiere. I am really, really, really excited to play it. I know we enjoyed playing the original game, so getting to play the DLC is really exciting. I am looking forward to having you all there to see me probably lose my mind over the puzzles. And next Thursday, we'll be continuing more Treasure Island. And if we do any other additional streams that week, I will alert you beforehand. Firefly, I saw some fireflies tonight. Yulian 20, I will only get to see some of it. Aw, of course. Oh, sorry about to hear that. Cool skeleton, I don't see that many fireflies where I am anymore. Oh, that's a shame. Fireflies usually need lawn grass, I know that. Of course, if you miss any of my streams, you can always watch the VODs on YouTube. They are posted the day after. They premiere the day after every stream. They stream. They will stream with commentary on the side if you wish to comment on them. You can find me on YouTube under the name Matsu Quinox. And I also on my YouTube channel will post additional little shorts, short from the study, which you can only see on YouTube. And I am planning even more content on my YouTube channel for specifically that account. So, before we leave, I think we should raid someone. Let us see. And I believe that Sophia Ignasi is doing a makers and crafting stream. We will raid her, and she is doing it for the VTuber SummerSlam charity. So we'll visit her tonight. I am so exhausted from the reading that I'm getting mealy mouthed. So I should probably close out my stream with our little exit. So I say unto you, my dear scholars, good evening, good morning, good afternoon, till we meet again in each other, till we meet again in the study. Take care, and I shall see you next time. Till then, farewell and bye bye.